New reporting from the Daily Caller News Foundation reveals senior intelligence officials withheld classified information that COVID-19 came from a Wuhan lab while keeping the Trump administration in the dark. As a result, the report details how Anthony Fauci and his inner circle were able to push their narrative as they silenced scientists.
Now, former President Biden issued Fauci a preemptive pardon, but that's not stopping Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard from getting to the bottom of any potential wrongdoing.
Gabbard told DCNF reporter Emily Kopp, who broke this story, that she plans to hold the intel community accountable. Emily joins us now to discuss further. Great to see you, Emily. Welcome back to the program.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we turn to you and your expertise for updates on this story. What is this? What is the new information here? What is this report that was withheld from the Trump administration?
So it's not just one report. It's actually reports, analysis by our intelligence community's most elite spy scientists, people who you would want investigating the origins of a novel virus across the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Department of Energy, and the FBI, all found their analysis on this issue suppressed by higher-ups who did not have the same expertise. You had higher-ups with sometimes no more than a political science degree saying, Fauci said that this lab leak thing was a conspiracy theory, so we're not going to advance your analysis of the hierarchy. And so there's understandably been all of this attention on the recent flurry of declassifications related to the Russiagate scandal. But even before those declassifications started, I started digging into this other massive intelligence deception, the fact that higher-ups embedded across the deep state suppressed pretty clear circumstantial evidence pointing towards a lab origin of COVID across both the first Trump administration and then stretching over into the Biden administration. And the motive appears to have been that many people within the IC are, have a liberal ideology and have a neoliberal worldview, and their approach to biosecurity moving up until the COVID pandemic was that we need to forge partnerships with China, which of course led us to exporting very sensitive IP to China. And what I also found is that some of the very same scientists who were advising the intelligence community, I'm talking about people like Ralph Barrick, Christian Anderson, they're the kind of people who had this attitude of we need to forge partnerships with Chinese labs, and they weren't willing to look at the fact that this might have precipitated a global pandemic. So really essential intelligence, sophisticated work put together by the exact people in the intelligence community we would want examining this sort of thing never moved up the chain, and I think still remains out of view for the American public.
Now, a lot of things are uncovered by investigative journalism like your own, but some people and critics are going to say this feels like this investigation could be partly partisan or feel like an attack against Fauci or Biden. How would you respond to that, understanding that your outlet does have a conservative lean to it, that people would automatically connect those dots with how much criticism came with COVID and everything around it?
I think every American should be upset with Fauci, no matter what their political affiliation. This was somebody who was the head of U.S. biodefense. Much like J. Edgar Hoover, he was sort of embedded in government for decade upon decade upon decade, and accumulated massive influence over that time, overseeing a multi-billion-dollar portfolio. And when a novel virus came along that a lot of circumstantial evidence tied to a lab that he had sent funding to and sent sensitive IP to, he used his position as the head of U.S. biodefense, including multiple meetings with the National Security Council in January and February 2020, never mentioned this connection, and in the public, used his position as for a time, a trusted voice in the media to also suppressed this theory that would have massive reputational consequences for him. So this is someone who put his own personal interests and covering his butt basically over national security. And there were a lot of other mini Faucis sort of embedded in the deep state as well, who, when presented with evidence, looking at the viral genome, and the viral genome contains clues suggesting engineering that Chinese authorities couldn't hide. Chinese authorities, they can, order their labs to destroy samples. They can delete sequences from databases. What they can't do is hide the genome of the virus itself. And our smartest scientists were saying there are clear signs that this is a lab-generated virus embedded in the genome that Chinese authorities are powerless to hide. And Fauci used his enormous influence to suppress that fact. COVID infected Democrats and Republicans, and I think no matter what your affiliation is, you should be upset that you were deceived for years.
Right. I don't want evidence one way or the other suppressed at all. If more information emerges to support a natural spillover event, great. I want to hear about it. I hope our intelligence officials consider that, write about it, and release reports to that effect to the public. Let's talk a little bit more and quickly, because we'll unfortunately have to go, but accountability for we talk tons about accountability for Fauci. But who are these kinds of people who get to, who are above the decisions or the intelligence being gathered by the Energy Department or the FBI and whoever it is? There's people above them that get to say, oh yeah, we're not going to bring this to the president's attention. Like, that seems to me to be the real crisis, that there's some layer of unaccountable bureaucrats who get to conceal from the president. At the same time as when you have Congress and the president, even Biden agreeing, declassify COVID information. They voted on that years ago, and then we get nothing, or we get something that I think is totally not responsive to what we asked for. It's that middle layer of bureaucracy, is it not?
That's absolutely right. The bad news there is that we very rarely get any sort of insight or accountability into that sort of deep state middle layer. The good news is that you sort of have an extraordinary figure in our current DNI, Tulsi Gabbard. I was just yesterday at Liberty Crossing, which is like the ODNI campus, and they announced that they were slashing 40% of these middle layer bureaucrats. They've also revoked security clearances of folks who were found to participate in the weaponized, in some cases, fully manufactured intelligence related to Russiagate. One of those people happened to be Beth Sanner, who prepared President Trump's presidential daily briefs in that 2020 period where a lot of this evidence was being suppressed. They also announced, the ODNI and Gabbard announced yesterday that they were getting rid of the National Counterproliferation and Biosecurity Center, which is this center that was embedded in the ODNI, overseeing biosecurity matters. And the leadership of that center specifically was involved in suppressing intelligence related to COVID, probably starting from a lab, and called it a conspiracy theory. So you have, I think, an extraordinary moment in American history where we're seeing some cleaning house within our intelligence community and some declassifications. And again, there hasn't been as much attention to this issue as the Russiagate declassifications, but I do know that this remains a priority, and my hope is that we do start seeing some of those declassifications, Robbie, that we've been waiting for since 2023.
Certainly. Emily Kopp of the Daily Caller News Foundation, always glad to have you on the case. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
We have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.